After Elias left the room, Evelyn sat frozen in a suffocating silence, her eyes fixed on the word etched into her desk, beginning. Her gaze lingered on the word, but her mind had ventured far deeper. Elias's cryptic words hinted at something even more dangerous than him, filling Evelyn with the horrifying realization that her past mistake was merely the beginning. When she returned home that evening, a chill greeted her as she stepped inside. The atmosphere felt disturbed, as though something intangible had invaded her space. Evelyn turned on the lights, but her eyes kept darting to the dark corners of the room. She spent the entire night tossing and turning, unable to shake the feeling that faint whispers were echoing around her. The next morning, she was jolted awake by the sound of her alarm. Beside her bed lay a piece of paper, with the same word Elias had carved into her desk, beginning. Panicked, she scanned the room. The doors were locked, the windows securely shut. How had the paper gotten there? Sitting at her desk, she examined the paper. Suddenly, she felt a breath on the back of her neck. She whipped around, but no one was there. As she held the paper, she noticed a strange texture on its surface. Looking closely, she spotted faint marks at the bottom of the sheet. This wasn't like Elias's crude carvings. It resembled a symbol or letter. Grabbing a small UV light from her desk, she shone it over the paper. Under the beam, hidden text emerged: Woodmont Cemetery. Her breath caught in her throat. Woodmont Cemetery was an abandoned place that everyone in high school had avoided. As she stared at the name, a memory resurfaced. One day, she had followed Clara as she skipped school, watching her disappear into Woodmont Cemetery. But back then, Evelyn hadn't dared to follow her inside. Now, this clue pointed to a dark secret tied to Clara, a secret Evelyn could no longer ignore. The next day, Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about the clue. Questions buzzed in her mind. Why had Elias left her this message? What did he stand to gain? That afternoon, she dozed off at her desk while working. Her dreams were vivid, far more vivid than usual. She saw Clara hiding something in the cemetery, calling to her. The whispers became clearer. Find me, Evelyn, or I will find you. When she woke, her decision was made. She would wait for nightfall and head to Woodmont Cemetery. Yet she still couldn't untangle Elias's role in this disturbing mystery. After seeing Woodmont Cemetery written in invisible ink, Evelyn's high school memories came flooding back. Clara used to talk about the cemetery often. Evelyn had always suspected that Clara was either hiding something there or seeking some form of solace. Now, Evelyn understood that the cemetery was the key to Clara's attempts to reach her. As dusk fell, Evelyn drove to the cemetery. Long abandoned, the place still exuded an oppressive sense of isolation. As she wandered among the gravestones, the silence grew heavier, almost suffocating. It felt as though the cemetery itself was watching her. After a while, she came upon a place that seemed eerily familiar, as if pulled from her memories: a massive, cracked oak tree. Next to it stood an old, weathered gravestone, its inscription worn away. Evelyn dropped to her knees and began wiping away the dirt and moss covering the letters. Finally, she uncovered a word she had seen before: beginning. Beneath the gravestone, she noticed something buried in the soil. Digging it up, she unearthed an old, rusted metal box. Opening it, she found a tattered journal, Clara's journal from their high school years. Beneath the gravestone, she noticed something buried in the soil. Digging it up, she unearthed an old, rusted metal box. Opening it, she found a tattered journal, Clara's journal from their high school years. The pages were yellowed and damaged, with parts rendered unreadable by time, yet one passage stood out. If you are Evelyn and you have found this, I am tired of hiding the truth. That day, you pushed me, but I wasn't the only one who fell. My soul stayed with you, now I am here to take it back. Evelyn stared blankly at the journal in her hands. The smell of aged paper seemed to carry a warning from the past. Clara's words echoed in her mind. My soul stayed with you, now I am here to take it back. Her throat tightened with emotion. At that moment, the silence of the cemetery was shattered by the sound of rustling leaves, but there was no wind. Turning toward the noise, Evelyn swore she saw movement among the gravestones. Shadows seemed to take shape, almost as if they were alive. Her heart raced. It felt as though someone or something was watching her. Clara, she whispered, but her voice was swallowed by the cold stones around her. At that moment, a note slipped from the journal and fell to the ground. Evelyn picked it up and read the two words written on it: don't look back. Her breath hitched, ignoring the warning. She lifted her head and turned around. There, next to the massive oak tree, stood Elias, but he no longer looked human. His eyes were filled with pure darkness, and a chilling smile stretched across his face. Slowly, he extended his hand toward Evelyn. Are you ready to face your past, Evelyn? he asked. Because this is only the beginning. Evelyn stumbled back in fear but tripped and fell to the ground. Elias advanced toward her, his every step causing the shadows around him to writhe and shift. Closing her eyes, she tried to think of what to do, but his voice echoed in her mind. You came here to find Clara, didn't you? But before you find her, you will lose yourself. When Evelyn opened her eyes, Elias was gone. But the shadows on the ground continued to move, merging into the shape of Clara. The silhouette leaned toward her and whispered into her ear. If you don't find me, I will come for you. Suddenly, the cemetery was plunged into complete darkness. Evelyn's rising fear told her that the next step would be even more dangerous. But there was no turning back now. Finding Clara was no longer just a choice, it was a matter of survival. As she left the cemetery, she could feel the darkness following her every step.